Right now, somewhere near you, someone is living with a mind that works differently than yours. Maybe you already know that. Maybe it's you. 1 in 5 adults will experience a diagnosable mental disorder this year alone. Not once in their life. This year. And yet most people couldn't accurately describe what separates one disorder from another if you asked them. You'd think, after more than a century of psychiatry, we'd have this all figured out. Clean categories. Clear lines. But the human mind doesn't organize itself that neatly. What we actually have is something closer to a map still being drawn, one that keeps changing as the science catches up. Let's start with where this map came from. In the late 1800s, a German psychiatrist named Emil Kraepelin did something almost nobody had done before. Instead of treating mental illness as one vague category of madness, he sat with patients for years and simply watched. He tracked symptoms, patterns, and outcomes over time. Slowly, distinct illnesses started to separate out from the fog. Kraepelin's early classification work became the foundation for how we still group mental disorders today, split broadly into families based on what they actually do to a person's thinking, mood, and behavior. So, let's walk through those families. Not every diagnosis, just the shapes. Start with mood disorders, because they're the most common entry point people have into this world. Depression isn't just sadness that lingers. Changes how the brain processes reward. Things that used to feel good stop registering the same way. Energy drops. Sleep breaks. Concentration becomes almost physically difficult. Psychiatrist Aaron Beck spent decades studying this and found something crucial. Depression often runs on distorted thought patterns, automatic beliefs like, "I always fail," or "nothing will get better." Patterns so ingrained the person doesn't even notice them happening. That discovery became the basis for cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the most effective treatments we have today. On the other end of the mood spectrum sits bipolar disorder, where mood doesn't just dip, it swings. Periods of depression alternate with periods of mania, of elevated energy, racing thoughts, and impulsivity that can feel euphoric in the moment and devastating afterward. It's not a personality quirk. It's a measurable shift in brain chemistry and activity. Researchers have tracked using brain imaging that shows real differences in how these states physically operate. Next, anxiety disorders. This is the largest category of mental illness in the world, and also one of the most misunderstood. Everyone gets nervous sometimes. That's not what this is. Anxiety disorders involve a threat detection system that's stuck in the on position, firing warning signals even when there's no actual danger present. Generalized anxiety disorder floods the mind with constant, hard-to-control worry. Panic disorder delivers sudden, intense physical attacks that can feel exactly like a heart attack. Social anxiety disorder turns ordinary human interaction into something the brain treats as genuinely threatening. In every case, the alarm system is working. It's just misfiring. Then there's obsessive, compulsive disorder, which gets thrown around casually online in a way that badly misrepresents it. Real OCD isn't liking things neat. It's intrusive, distressing thoughts the person doesn't want and can't simply dismiss, followed by compulsive behaviors performed specifically to reduce the unbearable anxiety those thoughts create. The compulsions aren't preferences. They're often exhausting rituals the person feels they cannot skip. Now consider psychotic disorders, the most heavily stigmatized category of all. Schizophrenia is the most well-known, and it's also one of the most misunderstood conditions in all of psychiatry. It doesn't mean a split personality. It means a break in how the brain filters and interprets reality itself, sometimes producing hallucinations, sometimes delusions, sometimes a flattening of emotional expression that gets mistaken for coldness. Harvard researcher Ronald Kessler, who led the largest survey ever conducted on the prevalence of mental disorders in the United States, found that psychotic disorders, while less common than mood or anxiety disorders, carry some of the highest rates of misunderstanding and social stigma of any diagnosis studied. personality disorders form another distinct family entirely. These aren't episodes that come and go. They're deeply ingrained patterns of thinking, relating to others, and viewing the self that started early and shaped nearly every relationship a person has. Borderline personality disorder involves intense emotional swings and a deep fear of abandonment. Narcissistic personality disorder involves a fragile sense of self hidden underneath a need for admiration. These patterns are notoriously difficult to treat, partly because they don't feel like a disorder from the inside. They feel like who the person simply is. Then, there are neurodevelopmental disorders, present from early in life rather than developing later. ADHD affects attention regulation and impulse control, not because of laziness, because of measurable differences in how the brain manages executive function. Autism spectrum disorder affects social communication and sensory processing, producing an extraordinarily wide range of presentations, which is exactly why researchers describe it as a spectrum rather than a single fixed condition. And then there are trauma disorders, like post-traumatic stress disorder, where the brain essentially gets stuck replaying a threat that has already passed. Flashbacks, hypervigilance, a nervous system still bracing for danger long after the danger is gone. This isn't weakness. It's a survival system that did exactly what it was built to do, and simply hasn't learned yet that the emergency is over. Here's the twist in all of this, the thing that gets left out of most explanations. These categories, as useful as they are, aren't as separate as they look on paper. Kessler's research found that most people diagnosed with one mental disorder actually meet criteria for at least one more. Anxiety and depression overlap constantly. Trauma symptoms bleed into mood and personality patterns. The brain doesn't file these conditions into neat folders, experiences them as an overlapping, tangled web, which is part of why diagnosis is harder than most people assume, and why treatment often has to address more than one thing at once. There's another twist too. None of these conditions exist because something is broken in a person the way a bone breaks. Every single one of them is a variation on systems your brain uses constantly: threat detection, mood regulation, attention, social processing, memory. In a mental disorder, one of those systems is simply running in a way that's causing real distress or real difficulty functioning. That's a genuinely different way of thinking about it than something is wrong with you. Something is working differently, sometimes overactive, sometimes underactive, almost never a personal failing. And that reframe matters because stigma is still the single biggest reason people delay getting help. Studies tracking treatment gaps consistently find that most people with a diagnosable mental disorder never receive treatment for it, often for years, often specifically because of shame, misunderstanding, or fear of how they'll be seen once the label is attached. Think about that. The map exists, the treatments exist, therapy, medication, and in many cases a combination of both have decades of evidence behind them. What's often missing isn't the science, it's permission. Permission to say something is happening internally that isn't a character flaw. Ask for help with it, the same way you'd ask for help with anything else your body was doing that needed attention. So go back to that first idea. 1 in 5 adults this year alone. That number was never meant to alarm you. It was meant to normalize something that culture still treats as rare and shameful when it is neither. It's common, it's explainable, and in almost every case, it's treatable. The mind you're living in isn't broken just because parts of it work differently than someone else's. It's simply one more version of the same complicated, remarkable system every person on Earth is carrying around, still being mapped, one honest conversation at a time. If this video changed how you think about something you thought you already understood, that's exactly the point. Every topic on this channel starts the same way. Something familiar, something you've never questioned, and by the end, it's never quite the same again. If you want more of that, hit subscribe. New videos drop regularly, and there's always another hidden truth waiting to be explained. Drop a comment and let me know what surprised you most, or tell me what you want explained next. I read every single one. And if you're not ready to stop yet, there's another video right here that might just change how you see something else entirely.